Greetings, fellow Earthlings. My name is Zach,
And I'm Jessica.
and this is
High Level Hairesy.
Question everything. Without the question, how can you have the answer? Wisdom comes from within. This is High Level Hairesy.
All right, well, welcome to episode 0, where we get to talk about ourselves for a little bit so you can get to know the people you're listening to.
I do think that is important to know a little background, and I don't know. It always helps me to understand where the person is coming from and some of their views and information.
I'd say hearing about a little bit of somebody's background and maybe their experience and things like that kind of gives things a little bit more context.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps you understand, okay, now I know why this person is talking about the things they're talking about. So,
Yes. So today we explore the question, who are the Fosters, Zach and Jessica? And we're going to go over the name High Level Hairesy and the why. And then we'll give you just a little background about who we are individually, kind of where we came from and when we started asking questions. And yeah, so then if you have any further questions, you're welcome to reach out. We'll have all our contact info. So, High Level Hairesy. Let's get into that. High Level came from, well, we wanted to stick with our brand, High Level Design Salon and Barbershop. We are the owners of said, it is High Level Design LLC. We have been in the industry, I myself, 20 years, and Zach, almost 11. So anyhow, we'll get into a little bit more about that later. But High Level stemmed from wanting to live our highest selves and level up and kind of speaking that into existence, and also that our craftsmanship and our service was high level, which it is. So Hairesy, we chose to spell heresy, Hairesy, for a couple reasons, instead of the correct spelling Heresy. And before we get into those reasons, I want to say that I looked up heresy, Hair, in the Urban Dictionary, and it said when your hair has committed a crime against God, which I do think we have some pretty, we don't want to commit any crimes against God, but we do have some pretty fire hair coming out.
always.
But okay, so heresy, Hairesy, man, you're going to like be walking around saying Hairesy because we have been in the beauty industry. Myself, 20 years, Zach, 10 years, a little longer. His was a little spaced out, but we in the beauty industry and Cosmo School, they tell you not to talk about religion or politics behind the chair. And we definitely talk about religion, politics. There's nothing off the table.
Nothing's off the table in our shop. It's judgment-free zone. You're free to talk about whatever we want to talk about.
You're
no
free
matter
to
how
be who you are.
free your mind.
The rest follow.
So it's a very welcoming environment, judgment-free, all of that. So that's why it's relevant that we wanted to make it known that we were in the hair industry, because the other part of that too is that all of those years behind the chair, that's just experience real life experience with people.
And we essentially have peer-reviewed research.
There you go.
We've seen patterns. You ask, 50 people in a week the same question, and you start hearing similar responses, or, you hear different things regarding current events and all different sides. So we have a practice of remaining unbiased in situations, and kind of can separate our viewpoints from anyone else's, and kind of take it with a grain of salt, but look at a bigger picture of kind of how humans move through things. Also, heresis.
Yeah, we found out that the original Greek root for the word heresy is heresis, and it is also actually spelled Hairesis. And that actually just meant to choose.
Choice.
Or choice. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like that's the original. And then eventually along the way, kind of got twisted a little bit. And the actual definition of heresy is to go against the grain, essentially, but it's a belief or opinion contrary to the orthodox doctrine, especially in a religious sense. Most people associate it with religious context, but I think you can be heretical in just society too, because you have societies accepted, majorly orthodox accepted beliefs of things, and going against the grain would be heresy.
And I actually was sharing some stuff about the podcast with a client, and she heard our intro, and she said, "It sounds like it said High Level Hairesy, not High Level Hair Salon." And I said, "It does say High Level Hairesy." And she kind of just looked at me like with a big old question mark on her face, because what the typical heresy stands for is that you're saying things against the common religious doctrine. So that also lends to why we're doing this, because we both grew up in a church background where you didn't really ask questions. When I was younger, I remember asking the pastor, who happened to be a family member, and I asked a few questions. I don't even remember what they were at this point, but it was just kind of a roundabout answer that kind of glazed over anything and then kind of brushed it under the rug. And at that time I was so young, I just went along with it. I digress. I'm getting off into my own personal when we're still talking about heresy. But within the church, some of what we began researching, the things we began to question, the things that we started digging for answers that were heart-led, gut intuition, still small voice led questions and they might be considered heretical to some of our discussions and some of what we are coming out here to share with the people who find our podcast, who have an ear to hear. And it's just kind of there were so many layers and meanings to it, and that just gets my juices going.
Well, we're just following our truth, following our hearts in this, because we've always felt, like she said, that there were just some things that didn't make sense. Not just within the church, really, it just in life in general, but obviously the church was so big for us growing up because we were raised in church, and there were just some things that, and like the Bible says, my people perish because of their lack of knowledge. So,
I don't necessarily think that means lack of knowledge of only one book either.
Right. Exactly. I think it's, study to show thyself approved. You'll hear me say that plenty of times. I love quoting that. And that's just do your own research, ask questions, teachers of any kind, whether it's a father, a priest, a shaman, a whoever, teachers are held to a higher standard, and they should be able to be questioned and not threatened when you question certain things, when you ask a question.
And if you can't hold your faith and your beliefs up to something
Up
else,
to scrutiny.
then do you actually believe it?
Right. That's a good question. That's a very good question. Let's talk about you for a minute. Let's hear a little bit about you. Talk about your background.
Well, I grew up in a Christian background. Very, very involved in the church. I had family members that ran the church, and it was one of the most important things in life. We would go Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday, and then if there was like a revival, oh yeah, it was that kind. Non-denominational, but very parallel to Pentecostal. Never, ever did I question the existence of God. I did have questions, as I mentioned earlier, small questions when I started noticing very young some things that didn't really make sense to me within the Bible. And I would always it would be glazed over, the question not really answered. And then I accepted it because I was young at the time. And as I started getting a little older, I will say it was a pretty judgmental atmosphere at a lot of times. And I wanted to be called a woman after God's own heart. And I was very much worked at that and wanted to be worthy of God. Then, let's get into my 20s, and I started questioning more, and I started realizing that I didn't feel good there. I felt off. I felt, that the energy was off, and that the things that Jesus spoke about, unconditional love and acceptance, non-judgment, it didn't seem to quite line up. I wasn't experiencing that, I'll just say. And I'm trying to choose my words carefully. So
this is a no judgment zone.
It is a no judgment zone. And we literally said unfiltered conversations. And so I really
no filter here.
No, yes. And so fast forward, I'd been feeling called to leave the church. And I knew that if I did that, it was going to put an end to a lot of relationships. And I had poured my entire life into it up to that point. I even chose a private college, going into debt for it, so that I went to Anderson University so that I could go to chapel. And then a little side note, by my time my senior year came, I was married, not to Zach. I was married my senior year. I had a 3.5 GPA. I worked full time, and I got put on chapel probation. What I went to school for to be able to participate in, I didn't meet the requirements, and I had to go to all the chapels or else I wasn't going to graduate. So I did make it, by the way. So, okay. I started questioning, started feeling off, started having experiences with relationships that felt antithetical to Jesus. Had prayed about it, asked mentors to pray about it, and was guided to leave. And when we left with a meeting to let it be known that in a couple of weeks it would be it. And then my family was shunned, and I was shunned from the majority of the church and also the family that ran the church. That was a very, very hard time for me. And I began seeking, I went to another church with my family and began trying to figure out, okay, let's find God here. Fast forward and for a couple years, and I really felt in my spirit that I needed to take a break from the atmosphere that I had always grown up in and the space that I always thought I needed to find God in. So I took a bit and ended up reading, actually my dad gave me a book called Conversations with God, and it was life-changing for me, by Neale Donald Walsch. If anybody were to ever ask me, what book should I read? I would say that book. It bridged the gap between what my heart was feeling, what my gut, my heart, my within was feeling, and everything I'd been taught growing up. And I will say, I just want to interject, my mom was a wonderful example of who Jesus was, who I believe Jesus to be. Unconditional love, forgiveness, consideration of others. She was a good example of that. So as I started, after I read Conversations with God, my spiritual walk feels like Neale Donald, before Neale Donald Walsch and after Neale Donald Walsch. And that whole series, there's 4 books in that series, and it was just amazing. And it started shifting. I started getting into Mike Dooley and the law of attraction and leveraging your universe and learning that I could co-create. I started questioning, getting into my beliefs and started like really digging in. And so I started kind of researching different religions and different paths and started noticing parallels between all of them. And then going even further, like up, bigger picture, and realizing that there were universal truths. One being that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and then kind of going from there. And my dad was a big part of, he was not present in my life the whole time, but we got to a point where he wasn't completely absent. I'd like to say that, but he got to a point where I was ready for what he had to offer. He helped me. He's the one that gave me Neale Donald Walsch Conversations with God and gave me all this Kirk Nugent. And then that started getting into all of what everyone, my family, we all used to say, oh, he's a mountain hippie conspiracy theorist. We all know that that's just made up. That was coined.
CIA coined that term after JFK was assassinated because everybody noticed inconsistencies in the stories that we were being told. So they used that, and it worked well because the moment somebody says conspiracy theorist, bam, you get a visual tinfoil hat, this dude's off his rocker, this dude's schizophrenic, Right. So they did their job. So I began to see that there were spiritual links to all of those things as well. And he questioned everything. He wrote a little booklet called Your Life is a Lie. And it talks about, and this book was over 20 years ago. And he speaks about pandemics, fluoride in the water, calcifying your pineal gland, all of these things that are we're currently going through, or you've seen in the last 20 years. And I think we've said before, but the only difference between conspiracy theory and the truth is about 30 days. So that number has gone down. It's got small. It used to be like 6 months. I remember first hearing that a long time ago, and it was like, it's 6 months, but lately it's definitely like 30 days.
Mm-hmm. And also our tagline, question everything. Without the question, how can you have the answer? Came from a line in one of his writings where he says, thank you for the question, for without the question, how can you have the answer? So that, looking at all the different paths, and I would question, and I only wanted what was best for my highest good and the highest good of anyone around me. And through that, I would get into some things that, and then maybe, I'm just testing it out and seeing. And I would be guided away from that because I want my highest good. And I trusted Spirit to guide me, and that my path was divinely guided, and still continue to question things that pop up. I mean, you never want to stop. And it doesn't mean that you don't have faith. Blind faith isn't what was asked. So I guess that kind of puts me, I can't really think of anything else right now as far as, the first time I ever heard everything is a psyop was from my dad up on that Kentucky mountain. Zach, how about you go into a little about where you're at and where you came from?
All right. So I too was raised in church from day one. I come from a pastoral family.
And at one point we attended the same church before we were
Yes. So
married.
We were both raised at younger ages. We were in different churches. Jessica and I didn't start. We weren't at the same church until I was about 12 or 13. But prior to that, my family's church, my grandparents were pastors, my parents were pastors. So I come from a heavy background in the church. So I was there literally every day. Like I was definitely there.
Well, you lived in a church.
I lived in my church literally. At one point. My mom and I, when I was really young, at one point actually lived in our church building was an old school building that we had bought and basically turned into the church and all that. So some of the classrooms had been turned into little apartments. So my mom and I literally lived in the church at one point. So I was there Sunday mornings, Sunday evenings, worship practice that my mom, was part of, and she was the worship leader, was on Monday nights. And then there was some meeting that we would go to on Tuesday nights. I don't remember what it was, but I had to go because my mom couldn't get a babysitter, or because both my parents had to go or whatever. And then Wednesday night church. And then maybe Thursday I didn't go, but Friday, Saturday probably had youth stuff going on. And then here's Sunday. So I was there all the time. So same type of church Jessica was raised in, but, my grandpa was an amazing man of God. Very much not a judgmental type of Christian, not a judgmental. He was a very good example of Christ and Christ's love. Fast forward to when I'm about 12 or 13, our church closes its doors for a few different reasons. And my family, my mom and my dad, myself and my little sister started going to the same church Jessica and her family went to. And that's how we met, and was there from 12 or 13 up into my very early 20s. So all of my formative years were spent here and very heavily involved, just like Jessica was, youth group, etc., the whole 9 yards. And it was a very judgmental environment. There were a lot of things from when I was a child in my family's church, as well as a lot of things at this church that I just didn't make sense to me. Certain things that were talked about, certain, subjects, whatever, viewpoints that just didn't make sense to me either. And that's kind of where a lot of that original questioning things started. Fast forward to after high school, I left, moved away, was down in Bloomington and for a little while, moved to Orlando for a period of time. And during that period of time, maybe a little bit after that, is I quit going to church. And because of just some things that had happened over the years, I had a lot of, what we would refer to as church hurt. Mm-hmm. And I fully claimed atheism for a while.
Yeah, I remember that. And I was like, Zach, no, you cannot be an atheist. God there's God. Maybe not the version that we grew up with, but I promise you, there's a God.
I was very anti-God, anti-church for a period of time. And I just, growing up in that, and then, I went the complete opposite direction. So that's really when I started questioning a lot of things. And I'll say this, questioning things wasn't what made me go in that direction. I want to reiterate that. It was the other way around. I started really questioning things after I had left the church and after I had kind of essentially stopped believing in God. And to segue into the next part, that's when I really started like deep diving into things and researching things that didn't make sense, not just within a religious or a church context, but like on the world stage and, different events that were happening around the world. My first real like big time that I can remember in my mind of this doesn't make sense and questioning some things was 9/11. I was only in 7th grade when that happened, but there were things that I remember even at 12 or 13 years old that seeing on the news, like there was just things that didn't make sense to me. I'm like, where, the plane that hit the Pentagon, where was the plane? I remember thinking as a kid, there's no plane right there. Geez, they cleaned that up really quick.
Mm-hmm.
And, and just that's just one example of many of things that just didn't make sense. And I remember, so that's my first real, like, I know that's not a religious or church thing that I was questioning, but this was the first thing. And that kind of always stuck with me, and then kind of questioned some stuff over the years. And then once I left the church, essentially 18, 19, whatever, is when I really started deep diving, researching things. This was the Wild West of the YouTube days, when nothing was censored. You could look up anything on there. So that's when I really started going deep into those kinds of things. So that was almost 20 years ago. And definitely had, my own struggles in life for a little bit, and which happens to coincide with the period of time that I fell out of belief. I'm actually just kind of realizing that. Wonder if there's a correlation there, because I wasn't living my highest self.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward a little bit, I finally meet Jessica's dad, Tom, for the first time after years of being invited down there. And finally went down there, and that is when things took a huge turn in my life, is when I met him. He was just a very, very special human being and taught me so many things. My eyes were opened to a lot of things, even more so at this point. I can also attest to conversations with God.
We read that at the same time.
Yep. That definitely had the same effect on me. I had never really read something like that before, and it was just so well written, and I
answered a lot of questions.
Answers a lot of questions. It's a what's it? 4 books? 3 books. 4 books. So it's 4 books, but they're all amazing, and that was a huge turning point for me.
The last one is about highly evolved beings,
AKA aliens.
but it's really good.
Right. So that was huge for me. Tom, rest in peace. Tom was huge for me. So
Tom Kenobi.
Okay, so that was kind of my background in a nutshell, and I've been self-studying, self-researching over the years. I definitely consider myself a student of philosophy, a student of religion, even, I could say. And we briefly can talk about us collectively.
Yeah.
Are you ready for a little magic in your day? At High Level Design Salon and Barbershop, they turn the mundane into magic. Whether you desire a custom color or highly detailed fade, Zach and Jessica can help you foster your sense of self. For booking inquiries, simply visit www.highlevel444.com. Their reviews speak for themselves. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. Cheers.
I would like to go into all the connections prior. So, as Zach mentioned, he had started coming to my church when he was like 12, 13. And I was actually 19 at the time in college, dating my now ex-husband. And so there's 7 years between Zach and I. And he would always bounce up to us like, hey guys. And he was in the youth group, I'm pretty sure, like when I was, part of, like Zach and I were always just friends. He was either inconsequential kind of at that age, just a little, or when it was like 19 that you were going to cosmetology school and we were friends. Just Zach was a family friend, like friends with my brothers. We always just hung out together, would house sit for.
I house sat. I house sat for her and her ex-husband. And dog sat, and we were just very good friends. I was great friends with her and her ex-husband, different people in her family, and
there were so many connections prior to us even meeting. I have to go down a list of a few of these things because I watched Zach's mom perform on a show like Captain Hook, and it was a Christian series and his mom was on it. And I watched that when I was just a child. And then I'm sure he was probably a little gleam in his mom's eye at that point. And then let's see, when I started doing hair, and Zach's mom was coming to me, and turned out that I was working next door to a woman that had done Zach's mom's hair and Zach's hair when he was little.
When I was like 5 or 6.
And she remembered him. And then Zach was at like 14, was a guest at my first wedding and held Layla in the hospital. And there was never anything prior, to us. And then just fast forward, I was married 11.
Before you say that, another connection. I went to school in 2nd grade with Jessica's step siblings.
That's before,
like this was
before they were my step siblings.
I was like 7 when I'm, and other people from the church, like,
mm-hmm.
the Hairs,
mm-hmm.
that family, I knew them. Just another weird, like, connection. My high school sweetheart, my high school girlfriend, her parents, her dad at one point was best friends with Jessica's dad. Now I knew Jessica at this point, but that friendship was prior.
My gosh, I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's wild. That's right. One of my dad's best friends, Zach dated his daughter. That we never knew that connection
until years later.
There was another one. I'm trying to remember. Well, you get the point. Oh, the church that my step siblings went to merged with our church before Zach's church then came and merged with ours, or your church, but you guys came to the church. And so there was just wild connections all throughout. And then
Jessica's church also used my church's baptismal.
That's right.
Before I ever started going to that. So there's just over and over again. We've been in each other's orbit for...
since I was probably...
30 years.
Yeah.
30, if you count least. All the way back to when, like, maybe not quite, but really 30 years, because in one way or the other, a couple of degrees of separation at least. And we've been in each other's orbit that whole time, living our own individual lives for years, especially with that kind of an age difference is bigger when you're younger. It's a bigger deal. Obviously, once you become an adult, you don't think twice about it. But It's just amazing, all of these. And then now fast forward to today, we have 2 kids, and they're my stepchildren that I obviously view as my children, but I am extremely grateful and blessed to most stepdads come into their stepkids' lives later on in life. You know, at some point, most stepdads are not typically around when their stepkids were born. And I was blessed to be able to be around in the hospital and stuff when Layla was born, when Cash was born.
And actually, the crazy timing was we didn't talk for about 2 years. I had Layla, and then you came back into our lives right about the time that I was questioning things in the church, and you were also, and I was pregnant with Cash. We all just hung out, you know,
We briefly
the whole
started
family.
going back to church, actually, for a little while. We were going to Heartland.
Yeah.
For a little bit.
Not we, like,
well, not together, but they started going, but I was also going because I was playing guitar for them.
We actually invited you to go. That was the way.
Mm-hmm.
Your mom was like, Zach really misses you guys. Zach left our life on a rude note, and I was pretty wounded by him, and as just like leaving our lives with no closure because he was directed to by someone, and we were a quote bad example. And so he came, his mom, I was doing her hair, and she's like, Zach misses you guys. And I was like, well, fine, he can go to church with us. And so we invited you to go there, and then like immediately you started playing guitar for them and was on their worship team, because Zach is very gifted at guitar. Then I think you left sooner than I did, and then I left. And anyway, that we were still just, you know, hanging out in each other's orbit, not really in each other's day-to-day lives. And then, you know, when I got a separation and then divorce, and then, you know, fast forward, we're hanging out more, and, you know, we were already friends. Then it became deeper, and we've been married for almost 10 years now.
Man,
and
time flies.
We had to go through a lot of, you know, beginning stuff, getting through a lot of our baggage, doing a lot of shadow work together. We still, you know, men and women are wired differently. We're not perfect. We are a team. I wouldn't be able to do what I do, and he wouldn't be able to do what he does without each other.
Nope.
And there's no doubt about that. Like, we're definitely Team Foster, #Team Foster.
All the way. So
brings us to today. You know, we just wanted to share a little bit about our backgrounds. I don't know if you guys need to know that some of what I talk about, I learned in yoga teacher training and some of these other certifications and whatnot that we hold and that we've dug into. I don't know if you need to know all that, but I was told that a bird doesn't need a certificate to use its wings. And if you do have any questions about any of, you know, our credentials, you're welcome to shoot us an email. Or DM us, or however you move about the interwebs. I guess, I mean, I don't know. Is there anything else for today?
I don't think so. I think that was everything that was kind of relevant, so that it wasn't just 2 random people coming on and with no context. I think it was good for anybody that's interested. Maybe some people don't care, and that's fine.
And then they don't have to listen to episode 0.
Right.
You can go straight into episode 1 or wherever you've come across us. We're doing the podcast to simply share what we've learned, share what has lifted us up and helped us to continue to climb higher and to come out of a stress loop of worry and fear, and to accomplish some things with like little to no financials, which we talk about that, but just the way our shop came about and high level design in general, there's a lot of magical, miraculous things. So we want to share and help raise the vibe, the frequency of the collective, of the planet, so that we can all begin to live as one and co-create, step out of some of the suffering.
And hopefully inspire discourse. Hopefully inspire some of you to
talk about things that make you go,
Things that make you go, and to just question some things. Really question everything. And hopefully we can inspire some of that, which leads me into our episode 1. Make sure you check it out. We go a little bit deeper into, what is it, Jessica?
Am I really creating my reality? What is the law of attraction?
Oh man, that is gonna be a good one. Good episode 1. It's very practical, something that we can all use in our own life. And that's another thing, is that we're going to be asking questions. Every episode, we're going to ask a question, and then we're going to explain it. We're going to try and answer it to the best of our abilities.
With backed up information, research, testimonials.
We'll give you the science and the spirit behind everything that we talk about. We bring the receipts, as I like to say, to show you, parallels between different, people, or parallels between different religions, whatever it is, the spiritual and the scientific backing for everything that we talk about. So make sure you check out episode 1. And after that, please make sure that you share this around. If there's anybody that you'd like to
subscribe,
share, get the word out. So
help raise the vibe. You too can help raise the vibe of the planet and yourself. And when you do it for others, you are doing it for yourself.
Amen, sister.
So today's episode has been brought to you by
High Level Design Salon and Barber Shop.
If you have any well, you wouldn't have the information. But
if you have any questions or would like to know how to book, just visit our website, www.highlevel444.com. And you can find out any and all information from there on how to contact us. Also, if you'd like any more information on the podcast, you can also visit the podcast tab on our website, on the same website, and we'll have contact info for us regarding that, but also, books, recommended reading, maybe little video clips, and then also episodes as well, or links to get to our podcast episodes. Okay. Until next time, we leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. May the Force be with you.
And also with you.
High Level Hairesy.